cold wind blew across the empty highway the night the sirens began echoing through the dark forest. The moon hung low, pale and distant, watching silently as the flashing lights cut through the trees. In the middle of the road lay two German shepherds, one motionless, the other bleeding from his shoulder yet refusing to move even an inch away from the still body beside him. Drivers had stopped, officers rushed in, but the wounded dog growled weakly every time someone tried to pull him away. His brown eyes were wide and terrified, not for himself, but for the partner he refused to abandon. His body trembled from pain and exhaustion, yet he stayed pressed against the lifeless chest of the other dog, as if his presence alone could bring him back. It was a heartbreaking sight that made even the toughest officers freeze. Something about the way the injured dog curled protectively around his partner felt human, emotional, and deeply loyal. It was loyalty in its purest form. If you believe in loyalty, kindness, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. The officers later learned what happened. These two dogs, Rex and Shadow, were part of a volunteer search and rescue group run by a retired firefighter named Mark. For years they had saved hikers, kids, elderly people, and even rescued lost pets. They were a team so synchronized that Mark often said they didn't work together, they breathed together. Everyone knew Rex was the calmer one, while Shadow was fearless and protective. They were more than partners, they were brothers in every way except blood. Earlier that evening, they were responding to a missing boy in the woods when they were struck by a speeding truck whose driver never stopped. The boy was eventually found unharmed, but Rex took most of the hit. Shadow, wounded himself, had dragged his injured partner off the road to a safer spot and stayed beside him, barking until help arrived. It was something witnesses still couldn't understand. How could a badly injured dog use the last of his strength not to save himself but to save another? The vets worked quickly. Rex was in critical condition, barely clinging to life, while Shadow continuously paced outside the operating room, whining softly, trembling and refusing food. Every time someone pushed him away, he returned to lying by the door, as if waiting for the moment Rex would walk out wagging his tail like always. Shadow's eyes were red, not from pain, but from something humans knew far too well: fear of losing someone you love. Mark sat beside him the entire night, his hand resting on Shadow's neck. He whispered to him, even though Shadow could hardly hear anything beyond the sound of Rex's faint heartbeat somewhere behind those metal doors. When the vets finally came out, they looked defeated. They said Rex's injuries were too severe. He had lost too much blood. His internal wounds were deep and irreversible. They said he might not make it through the night. Mark felt his chest collapse, but Shadow reacted first. He let out a long, hollow cry that echoed through the clinic, a sound so painful that even the staff had tears in their eyes. They allowed Shadow into the recovery room, even though it wasn't standard procedure. They knew he wouldn't survive another separation. He limped toward Rex and gently pressed his head against Rex's body, his breathing shaky, his heart thumping in broken rhythms. The vets stepped back and gave them space. The room was quiet, except for the machines beeping slowly. Shadow stayed like that for hours. He didn't sleep. He didn't look away. He guarded Rex the same way Rex had always guarded him. Mark remembered how many times Rex had jumped in front of danger to keep Shadow safe. Now Shadow was returning the favor, staying by him until the very last moment. Just before dawn, Rex took his final breath. Shadow felt it first. He lifted his head. His ears lowered, and then he let out a whimper so soft it sounded like goodbye. He didn't leave Rex's side even after the vets turned off the machine. He lay there until they gently lifted Rex's body away. That moment changed something inside Shadow forever. The days that followed were rough. Shadow would walk to Rex's empty sleeping mat and lie on it for hours. He refused to play, refused to respond to commands, and barely ate anything unless Mark fed him by hand. He kept going to the front door, waiting for Rex to return. No matter how many times Mark tried to comfort him, Shadow's eyes remained dim. It was grief in its purest form, raw and silent. Dogs feel loss, but Shadow felt it deeper because Rex had been a part of his soul. The rescue team contemplated retiring Shadow, thinking he might never return to work again, but their assumptions were wrong. Something unexpected happened. 2 weeks later, another call came in. A little girl was missing in the woods. Shadow heard the call and suddenly stood up. His tail didn't wag, his eyes didn't shine, but his posture changed. There was determination instead of despair. He walked to the door as if saying he wanted to go. Mark hesitated at first, but Shadow insisted. It was as if he sensed something bigger than grief. He wasn't replacing Rex, he was honoring him. The forest was thick and cold and the search team was losing hope. Hours passed. The wind picked up, the sky darkened. Shadow walked slowly at first, sniffing the ground, following faint traces. Then suddenly he stopped, lifted his head, and darted toward a cluster of fallen logs. He began barking urgently. The team rushed toward him and found the missing girl trapped in a small hollow under the logs. She was cold, scared, and shivering, but alive. Shadow stayed beside her until help arrived, nudging her gently with his nose to keep her awake. When they lifted her out, she wrapped her tiny arms around Shadow's neck. For the first time in weeks, Shadow's eyes softened. Word about Shadow spread quickly. People called him a hero. News stations broadcast his story. Donations came in for the rescue team. But what touched everyone the most wasn't just that Shadow saved another life. It was the reason behind it. The vets explained something that left everyone speechless. They said Shadow had been following Rex's last scent trail, a trail Rex had started before the accident. Rex, even in his final moments, had been searching for the girl. Shadow was simply finishing the mission his partner had started. That revelation shook everyone to their core. It was loyalty that continued beyond death. Mark broke down when he heard that. He realized Shadow wasn't refusing to move forward. He was refusing to abandon Rex's purpose. That night, Shadow lay on Rex's old mat again. But this time, he didn't look lost. There was a calmness around him, a sense of fulfillment, as if Rex's spirit had guided him one last time. For the first time, Shadow curled up and fell into a peaceful sleep. Near the end of the story, if this touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything. Before the ending, please comment, "Loyalty never dies." In the months that followed, Shadow continued working with the team. He wasn't as playful as before, but he became wiser, more focused, and more protective. Every mission he completed felt like a tribute to Rex. People around the town would stop and pet him, calling him the bravest dog they had ever seen. But Shadow never sought attention. All he wanted was to honor his partner's memory. Mark realized something important. Shadow didn't heal by forgetting Rex. He healed by carrying Rex with him. Love doesn't disappear when someone is gone. It transforms into the strength to continue. Shadow lived many more years, becoming a legend within the rescue community. When he finally grew old, Mark would take him to the woods where he and Rex had worked together. Shadow would sit quietly, looking at the trees, the sunlight, the trails. Maybe he remembered every mission, every bark, every moment with Rex. Or maybe he simply felt at peace knowing he had fulfilled his partner's final mission. When Shadow passed away peacefully in his sleep, Mark buried him right beside Rex, two partners reunited again. People came from miles away to pay respects to the two dogs who had taught their town what loyalty truly means. Their graves still stand together, a silent testament to a bond that even death couldn't break. And to this day, rescuers say that on quiet nights, they sometimes hear faint barks deep in the woods, like two partners still patrolling side by side. The story of Rex and Shadow lives on because love like theirs never fades. It becomes a reminder that loyalty is not something you teach. It is something you feel, something you carry, and something you honor.